Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the People's Basics. We are here once again to do one of our segments called the Commoner's Corner, where we try to talk to regular people like you to really establish what we think the basic premise of what government should be doing for its people, what needs to change to be able to reach that point, and just be able to hear more of what the real issues that people are facing today are. So, with us on the program today, we are going to be talking to Sass, who is an individual who actually is planning to run for Congress in 2022, district to be determined later by apportionment. And with that being said, let's welcome him to the program. And do remember, please like, share, and subscribe to our podcast so that it helps us with the algorithm gods and more people can hear regular people like you. With that being said, let's welcome Sass to the program. Welcome, Sass.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. So for the people out there that might not know who you are, as you are a regular person like so many others that get to come on, could you let the folks out there know a little bit more about yourself, where you're from, what you do, and how you politically identify?
Yeah. So my name is Sass. I am currently running for U.S. House Representatives down here in Texas. I live in Austin. Like most Austinites, I'm not actually originally from Austin. I'm originally from Michigan. I moved down to Texas a while ago to kind of find my next chapter in life. Been here for a while, and I think I found it. I'm running for a laundry list of reasons, but kind of the catalyst was, over a year ago now, I was laid off from both of my jobs a day apart from each other. Then just watching the country collapse in real time in front of my face, along with everybody else, and I was like, I can do something about this. So I'm doing something about it. And that's what it comes down to.
So I would love to ask you, when you talk about, you see all these issues that are around us, obviously there is pandemic on a lot of people's mind from this past year. But I'd love to hear in your mindset, like, what are those real issues that you think government should be addressing? And kind of rooted on that question is, what do you think is the basic premise of what government's responsibility should be?
I mean, the government's responsibility, or what the government should do, is up to the people. But right now, the government is not accountable to the people. The incentives of our representatives are not aligned with the people. They're aligned with their moneyed interests. And that's for a variety of mechanical reasons that are fundamentally broken, many of which can actually be changed without constitutional amendments. And it's going to require a lot of citizen lead. I'd love for the government to provide for the general welfare of the people and improve the well-being of everyone, and particularly in the United States as a military and economic and political superpower. I believe that we have the opportunity to influence the entire world in incredibly positive ways, but it's not right now because those fundamental mechanics are really broken.
So from my perception, it does say, the general welfare aspect of which we enshrine in our Constitution is that big thing. It's a little bit of a catch-all term. When you say welfare, one of the things that we do here at the People's Basics is we advocate for universal basic income and universal basic services. And I'd like to hear in your mindset, what responsibilities or services or things that government should be providing that you think, at least from a federal level, we should be looking to try and provide for our people.
Yeah, and I'm always thinking about the United States specifically when I'm thinking about this kind of stuff. But I always say the first step is UBI. Our government has failed to make progress on any real issues in the last 40 plus years in any significant way. And I strongly believe that it's because all of those issues, let me say the phrase the way that I like to say it. Universal basic income knocks down at least one foundational barrier to every problem we've been failing to solve for the last 40 plus years. Every problem has at least one roadblock, and at least one of those roadblocks can be solved through UBI. It's not an end-all be-all, but it is the first step. So I believe that's where we start, and also just taking this attitude as well of the U.S. government is not trusted by its people for good reason, and the one thing that our government seems to be able to do is write checks. So that could be a really great way to leverage what the government is currently good at and to start earning the trust of the people back. So I just see UBI as the first step, and then we can foray into more universal basic services and other important issues.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly echo that sentiment. And for people who are interested, our Basic Income podcast with Scott Santance is also releasing today at noon. So if you want to learn more about basic income, we highly recommend you all check that out. But, Sass, you were talking before about how you believe the structure of our government is not aligned with the people's wishes right now. Our third pillar on top of universal basic income and universal basic services that we like to cover is democracy reform. And so I'd love to hear in your mind, what are some of those top priorities that we can get done without necessarily doing constitutional amendments that you think we should be working on, that you would hope to maybe champion if you were to get into the House?
Yeah, and a lot of this too is like I said before, very citizen-led stuff, which is what I really like about it, is you're not relying on the government to fix itself and just hoping and praying. You're actually doing something. So voting systems is huge, voting methods. So right now we use our current choose one winner take all voting method. Subject to the spoiler effect, has gotten us locked into this duopoly very quickly. Actually, Duverger's law is the reason for that. It's just math. You will always end up in a duopoly with a choose one first past the post. Yeah. So the two voting systems that I advocate for are approval voting and star voting. Are you familiar with either or both of those?
Both, yeah.
Sweet. Do you want me to talk about them, or?
I would love to ask a clarifying question on that. You mentioned those two. I definitely agree that those are much better methods than our current system. I will say a lot of the momentum in the nation is kind of going towards ranked choice voting. And so I'd love to clarify why that one also doesn't reach your list.
Ranked choice voting is a garbage trash voting method that is not taken seriously by serious voting enthusiasts in any capacity. Ranked choice voting does not eliminate the spoiler effect. It only mildly mitigates it and still trends toward a two-party system. It will do nothing to get us out of the duopoly. And if it doesn't get us out of the duopoly, what does it matter? And it also only provides an illusion of choice. Let me give you the prime example. Imagine your first choice candidate is the last one eliminated. That means everything else you've expressed in your ballot is thrown away. That voter preference data is just not used. How the hell can you get an accurate result if you don't use half the data? You can't. And there's a myriad of other problems that I think actually make ranked choice voting worse than our current system, which is insane because our choose one winner take all system is just so bad in the first place. But things like lack of precinct summability, it performs best for the whole when everyone votes honestly, but best for individuals when they vote strategically. But when voting strategically, ranked choice voting actually performs worse in voter satisfaction efficiency than first past the post. And both systems push strategic voting on voters. It just does not stand up to modern voting science that uses voter simulations and multidimensional political spaces to find candidates close to the center of public opinion to maximize voter satisfaction efficiency, minimize voter regret. There are problems. It doesn't weigh votes evenly, so it's not one person, one vote. I mean, neither is first past the post in its own way, but it's incredibly expensive to switch to. You get an astronomically high chance of near-tie nightmares. The full ballot data is rarely, if ever, released, so there's transparency and trust issues. I mean, the list just goes on and on. It's failed to pass in many jurisdictions. It's been repealed in many jurisdictions. It's got a lot of problems. And the voting reform community, a blessing of modern voting science is it has really whittled down the options to just two. And it's approval voting and star voting. Those two really come out on top.
So I have some minor disagreements with the claim that it's worse than first past the post, but I will completely acknowledge your point that ranked choice voting is not nearly as qualitative in nature. That's the wrong word. It is not as quality in nature as a system like a star voting system or approval voting. I personally advocate for star voting as my system of choice, primarily because I think scoring has a little bit of a wider range than just a 0 and 1 like approval does. So it gets a little bit more breadth of how people feel. But we can agree ranked choice is not an ideal system. But I have a personal different opinion on the fact that I think it is better than first past the post, but we can both agree that voting system reform is needed and ranked choice voting is not nearly close to the best system.
Yeah, again, the argument I make is that like it's not going to get us out of the duopoly or polarized electorate. We're going to stick in a two-party corporate duopoly. So in my opinion, there will be it won't affect anything. And then you're also lying to voters with the illusion of choice. You run into the precinct sumability problem, which is a huge election security issue for a longstanding military and economic superpower. Like there are other issues with it. But I will say that like there are times where star voting can be difficult to get implemented, whether it's because of election code or it's a small jurisdiction that doesn't have a lot of money to spend on. So that's why approval voting is also like a great second choice in some cases. So I always I agree. Star voting is more accurate, and it's far more expressive, and it's really great. And if you can get star voting, go for it. But you will find that there are situations where it's like to try to get star voting where you are is really hard, and approval voting is really easy, and you should just take the path of least resistance in that case because you can get 90% of the way there with approval voting for a lot less.
Yeah, I think that's a very reasonable point. So, Sass, I wanted to ask you just on a kind of like closing remark, when it comes to the fundamental basic role of government, and we're talking about democracy reform here, we have basically made this point of the incentives do not align. The government is not currently being held accountable by the people, and we need this democracy reform to pass. You were talking before about how we don't need to do all of our solutions through government. What are some of those efforts that you think people should be looking to do if they're not doing the same level of effort of trying to run for office like yourself? What do you think people should be doing to try and bring this vision forward that you have?
Yeah, so I have two like general blanket recommendations for people if they're looking for like what should I do with my time. So one of them is working with the Equal Vote Coalition or the Center for Election Science to get star voting or approval voting in their jurisdiction. It's a very ground up kind of change, kind of classic change in the U.S. The other general recommendation is create genuine human connection with people you disagree with. It's a really hard thing to do, but directly addressing division is an important part of my platform as well. Something I intend to do both within both within government and outside of government. I have different things I want to do in that space, but I also want to touch on the government accountability thing real quick.
Sure.
One of the things I'm going to do is when I'm elected is I'm going to hire a firm to build basically a public forum where constituents in my district can log on, verify their residency. They can be anonymous on there if they like to talk about local politics. But the main feature is that every time I vote on a piece of legislation, they'll be able to approve or disapprove of my vote on that legislation. So they'll be able to see the legislation, kind of a plain English translation of it, some education about it, why I voted the way I voted. But then I will have a public scorecard of how representative I am of my district. And the really cool part is this will be open source. I'll just be the guinea pig. We'll test it on me. We'll work out the kinks. But then this can be applied to every representative across the entire country without their consent. And so now we're no longer stuck to these private channels of emails and phone calls that can be ignored. And now we have this much more like streamlined public conscience of like every step along the way. What do the people think of the specific thing that you've done? So this is a really like great citizen-led thing that can happen that I'm super excited about. So those are kind of a very basic overview of some of my thoughts around this.
Oh, that's awesome. Sass, I think that last idea that you shared is something that we frankly have been exploring ourselves as a network. And so it's great to see people who want to try and do it from the inside, because some of the technical challenges that we ran into is having that kind of compliance and test case and buy-in from people on the inside. So we do wish you the best of luck in that. With that being said, do you have any final words that you'd like to share with the audience, or anything that you'd like for them to go check out? And finally, any questions that you might have for me to address in my closing remarks?
Yeah, so as you can see, my name, voteforsass.com. That's the central hub. You can go there, learn about my platform. You can donate. You can find all my social media on there. You can send me a direct message. I'm very responsive. So voteforsass.com is that simple. Just start there, and you can go to wherever you need to go. And then I do have a question for you, John. It's just the same question I ask, and everybody else I talk to all day, Texans all over the state, and Texans who moved out of the state, frankly. What do you care about? What's the most important? What are some of the most important things to you as a representative, particularly a federal representative? I feel as though I'm representing everybody, so I can't do that if I don't know what you think.
Yeah. Some is a bit obvious for the network that we create here. We champion democracy reform. We champion universal basic income and universal basic services. But I would say of my top priority, it is being able to, frankly, have democracy reform and accountable government. It is having similar tech platforms, as which you said, are bringing that transparency to people. That is the number one thing to me, because regardless of what economic system you use, we are always going to be somewhat tied to whether or not there's a high or low level of corruption in our government. Whether it's a capitalist system, a socialist system, corruption in our government is a terrible thing for any society, and we need to tackle that head on. So that's my number one issue.
Sweet. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Well, Sass, it was a pleasure being able to talk with you. I hope everyone will go check out your website, voteforsass.com, and we hope we can have you back in the future so we can talk again sometime. It was a pleasure having you on.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, everyone. That was Sass. I want to remind you all to be able to come on yourself. We have in our description section below a link to our link tree, which includes all of our links. So if you want to join us on social media, find all of our content, you can click that as well. There is a link to my Calendly for you to be able to sign up to come on a show yourself. With that being said, my friends, I hope you all will check out our content coming out later today with our podcast. I hope you have a great rest of your day out there. And as always, I hope you stay basic out there.